Welcome to the role of procurement and supply chain management and the 8-step sourcing process. This is our second module in our free 24-module masterclass about the principles of category management and strategic sourcing. So what we're going to do, first of all, before looking in more detail at what is the role of the procurement and supply chain management function and or the competence of procurement and supply chain management, is to provide a definition. So, on the first slide here, you can see I provided a definition of the procurement supply chain management function or competence. All organisations have to make decisions about make-buy, insourcing or outsourcing. So when we refer normally to the procurement and supply chain management function, we're referring to that aspect of the management process where the organisation has decided that it will outsource the supply of particular goods and or services. Certain things will be supplied internally, but it needs a management process for the effective sourcing of external supplied goods and services. So, if you like, external resource management. So, in the definition in your pack, you'll see the definition that I provided. Having decided on the activities and tasks that should be insourced and those that should be outsourced, procurement and supply chain management, or PSCM as we will use the phrase sometimes in this module, refers to the sourcing process that organisations use to undertake all of the activities and tasks required for both the pre-contractual acquisition process and the post-contractual management of externally resourced goods and services. So very clearly, any organisation, whether public or private, has to manage a pre-contractual phase and a post-contractual phase in the sourcing process for all externally managed third-party goods and services. So when we talk about procurement, sometimes I'll use the words purchasing, but they're interchangeable, procurement and purchasing. I normally use procurement. Procurement and supply chain management refers to the process by which people acquire pre-contractually contractual relationships with suppliers to provide goods and services, and then post-contractually, having awarded contracts, have a management process for ensuring the delivery of those goods and services at the right price, at the right time and place, and to the right quality. So all of this is normally referred to as a process that manages QCD, quality, cost and delivery, of the goods and services that have been contracted for. Now, one of the key issues for us when we think about world-class competence or best-in-class competence in procurement and supply chain management is what's the right process for effectively managing this pre- and post-contractual process? How should it be managed and by whom? And how important is this process for procurement and supply chain to the strategic and tactical and operational goals of the organisation? So as you can see on the slide, this module in particular, this section looks at how should the PSCM sourcing process be managed. That means by whom and how, and then how important is this sourcing process to the overall strategic goals of the organisation. Now, before we actually look at this in more detail, what I'd like to do is spend a bit more time just explaining to you what we mean by that pre- and post-contractual process, what we've referred to as the strategic sourcing process. Now, you can split this process, which has 29 activities and 88 tasks, into any number of different steps if you wished. You could actually have an 88-step process or a 29-step process if you just divided this by the activities and tasks. The important point, however, is not to say how many steps are there. The fact that we've created 8 steps, some organisations may have 4 steps or 24 steps or 13 steps or 7 steps, isn't the crucial issue. The real issue is, are we covering appropriately sufficient of the activities and tasks that could be used, that are available for a world-class competent organisation to use when we manage particular categories of spend. And that's one of the key themes that runs through all of the training modules. Okay, so looking at the slide, we can see we have an 8-step process that's divided into these actions and activities. Step 1 in the strategic sourcing process that we refer to as category segmentation and team selection. So, category segmentation and team selection is the starting point of the whole strategic sourcing process. Every organisation has to divide up the things that it buys, 100% of its goods and service purchase, into manageable categories or segments, so that it can create teams to manage the strategic sourcing process as a whole. So that means managing the acquisition of contractual relationships in the pre-contractual phase, and also the post-contractual management of the process. All organisations in the world, whether they do this in a formal way or only in an informal way, have definite ways of dividing up and segmenting the things that they have to acquire, and provide different role, responsibility, authority and accountability structures for people who will be responsible for those categories. So in step 1, category segmentation and team selection, all organisations have to create methodologies that allow them to understand how to segment effectively, how to aggregate, disaggregate, so that they maximise the effectiveness and efficiency through which they make sourcing decisions. Having made those decisions, we now move to step 2. In step 2 of the process, part of the pre-contractual activities and tasks is to specify business requirements or to specify business needs. Now, what do we mean by specifying business requirements? All organisations have to understand what their customer requirements are and their internal client requirements are. Organisations will have line management responsibilities, and they'll also have functional, general organisational divisions or departments like HR, legal services, IT, strategy, R&D, and the like. These general functional areas or divisions, units, will work coincidentally with line managers who are responsible for the delivery of the goods, manufacture goods and services that have to be provided to customers, whether those customers are public sector clients or private sector customers. All organisations need to understand what are the requirements of the organisation to deliver the goods and services that provides the lifeblood of the organisation, whether that's revenue in the private sector or the delivery of valued outcomes in the public sector. So in step 2 of the process, we have to have a methodology that allows us to understand the trade-offs between use value and the cost of ownership. So we need to understand the quality and delivery standards that are required against what type of trade-off of total cost of ownership or price that we are prepared to pay to receive a particular level of quality and performance and delivery standard. And it's here in step 2 that some of the key decisions are made within an organisation about the specification of those trade-offs. Once we've done that within step 2, we also have to think about how do we manage internal demand levers, the way in which we manage our volume, our approaches to market, the demand structure that we impose on the market and the like. How do we manage those aspects of demand internally within our organisation in order to maximise value for money? So in step 2 we think about the internal power levers and resources that are available to us as buyers to get better leverage of value for money in the marketplace with our suppliers. That done, we turn to step 3. So in step 3 of the process, supply market analysis, and sometimes we add here supply chain analysis, what we're trying to do in step 3 is, having understood the process through which internal demand is managed, we need to understand how that impacts upon the supply market. So in step 3 of the process, we're trying to understand in some detail how many suppliers are there in the market, what's the nature of the competition in the marketplace, the levels of innovation, technological change, trying to understand the relationship between first-tier suppliers and what's happening further down the supply chains, and what the competitive forces, innovation and changes within those other tiers in the supply chain, from raw materials through to the finished good that we receive from our first-tier suppliers. It's in these areas that we try to understand in great detail what is actually happening in the supply market, so that we can understand what drives the interests of suppliers, how they perceive value from supply for their businesses, what sorts of returns they make from the supply of goods and services, in order to see whether we can assist them or use competition to drive continuous improvement in value for money. So helping us to understand the context of the power resources that suppliers have to achieve their interests relative to the power resources that we discussed in step 2 of the process. Now, having understood the supply market and the supply chains within those supply markets, one of the most important stages in the process is step 4. Step 4 is sourcing options selection. And this is the area in which the buyer, having understood their internal requirements and the external market structure in which they might source their goods and services, looks at the range of strategic sourcing and tactical options available to them to get that value for money through market testing and negotiation with suppliers. Obviously this is a crucial area, one that's sometimes, in my view, underdeveloped in many companies. Step 4, as we've seen, it actually says sourcing options selection. There is an S on option. There is an S on option because good practice says you should not just consider one option which you've already overdetermined without thought and analysis, but you should consider the full range of options that are available to you if you're going to be a world-class buyer. And in my experience, this is one of the major gaps that we're going to find in world-class, sorry, not in world-class, but one of the gaps we're going to find in normal practice in many organisations. People aren't given sufficient time and resource, or worryingly, they do not understand the full range of options that might be available to them, to do a full analysis to allow them to properly understand the opportunities for increased value for money. So, in step 4, our task is to understand in full the circumstances we're in, both in buyer terms and supplier terms, and to understand the relationship management and relationship performance management options that are available to buyers and suppliers, and then to think about which of these options strategically and tactically is the best for us to test in the market. And we may actually decide that we want to test more than one supplier in the market, or we may want to test more than one strategic sourcing option, and perhaps one strategic sourcing option but a range of different tactical levers and options in the marketplace. So there will be a range of different choices that we may want to take forward to step 5 in the process, which is once we have selected the strategic sourcing options and the suppliers we have pre-qualified to be capable of delivering the goods and services that we require against the relationship and sourcing approaches that we desire, we now, in step 5, tendering and market test, need to create a process that allows the buyer to have a formal, rigorous and robust process to undertake a proper objective analysis, not subjective, biased or prejudiced, but an objective analysis of the relative strengths of suppliers against one another, using a fairly rigorous, robust process that allows for proper bidding process with proper scoring methodologies, that allows the buyer to objectively assess the value for money performance of all potential suppliers that have been pre-qualified, who are prepared to provide goods and services, and so we can see which one is offering us, or which series of suppliers are offering us the best value for money outcomes. Now, at this point in the process, we may have done enough. The winner or winners are obvious. Sometimes there is only one supplier that we want to use, and we will, because there's nobody else to compete within the marketplace or test in the market, we will go straight to step 6, which is negotiation and, as we'll see, contract award. So, step 6 in the process, and this is the final step in the pre-contractual process. Before we award a contract award, we may, sometimes organisations don't allow this or don't sanction it, but often most organisations do. There will be a pre-contractual clarification process or a more formal negotiation process. And so in step 6 of a world-class process, you have to have a formal structure for planning, managing and undertaking structured negotiations with suppliers to see if you can improve on the value for money offers that are made from the initial market testing process. Whether we use negotiation or clarification prior to contract award, once we've done the negotiation and clarification of the supplier's offers in a world-class process, we have to have a structured process for contract award and approval within the organisation, and then the setting up of that contract, which will be part of the post-contractual stage. Now, if we now turn to the 8-step process, we can see step 7 involves contract startup and something called SPM. What do we mean by contract startup and SPM? Contract startup refers to the need to have a structured process for establishing the contract and managing it organisationally so that you can do purchase to pay and manage the day-to-day activities to deliver contractors' invoices to your organisation and have them paid on time and have them checked before they're paid. So you need a formal structure for doing that, but SPM maybe not as clear to people. Many people talk about supplier relationship management. In the process that we're going to take you through, we are going to talk about supplier relationship management, but make a distinction with supplier performance management. So that just so we understand right from the beginning why we've made this distinction, supplier performance management, SPM, in the context of the slides that you're looking at, SPM refers to how we manage the performance of the supplier, in fact how we measure and manage the performance of the supplier against the contractual terms and conditions agreed in the contract with the supplier. So we need a formal process for managing communication, for managing the relationship that you have under the contract, but the essential process here is the measurement of the performance of the supplier against quality, cost and delivery terms against the contract that the supplier has signed up to. The management post-contractually of performance is about what do you do if suppliers fail to meet the agreed terms and conditions that have been signed up to. So in world-class organisations you have a situation where the buyer has a formal structure, defined roles and responsibilities, authority and accountability structures for who will be managing the relationship with suppliers at the contractual level for the specific category of spend. Why is this different than supplier relationship management? Because it obviously has aspects of managing a relationship. Well, what we mean by SRM, supplier relationship management, is the global or overall relationship that an organisation might have with a supplier, which may extend beyond a single contract. So the relationship may only be one contract, so SRM and SPM in this case would be synonymous, they would be fused and be the same. But in some organisations, as you know, probably in organisations like your own, there are circumstances where a supplier may have multiple contracts with different business units, delivering slightly similar, dissimilar, sometimes the same goods and services, and sometimes with different prices for the same goods and services. The idea of supplier relationship management for an organisation is that an organisation has some methodology for thinking about the type of relationship they need to have pan-organisationally across the whole organisation with a particular supplier. This may lead to a tiering of approach, so sometimes you see people having gold, bronze, silver, that should be gold, silver, bronze, sometimes tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers and the like. And this is where we talk about the relationship management approach, because some suppliers will have much more strategic and operational impact for an organisation than other suppliers. And so organisations have to devote more time and resources to particular suppliers and manage the relationship on a long-term, ongoing basis, rather than just at the contractual level against the performance terms and conditions in the contract. So that's why we make a distinction between SPM, which is part of the standard category management approach, and SRM, which covers all categories and all relationships that a buyer may have with a particular supply organisation. Now, the final step, step 8, iterative transition to new strategy, is simply you have to have a formal process to learn lessons about the experience you've had from managing a category. And this should be a 360 review, by which we mean it shouldn't just be the buyer reviewing the supplier. They should also be looking for feedback from the supplier about the experience for themselves of managing the relationship. And in our view, world-class organisations have a structured process for not only this 360 review, but also for developing learning, sharing learning, and then transitioning and making decisions about contract closure, refresh, or rollover of the strategy, depending on which seems the most appropriate given the performance of the supplier relative to other opportunities in the marketplace. And often it will lead to termination of contract, even though it's been satisfactory, and then a complete refresh, and we start the process having reached step 8, we refresh, we decide to take the process through again. On the other hand, we may decide we jump straight down to just sourcing options in step 4, and on occasion we might just simply roll over a contract, as in the case of a framework agreement, and simply reissue a purchase order under the terms of the existing contract, because we don't think it's necessary to go through the whole of this process again. So this is what we mean by the strategic sourcing process. We've divided it into 8 steps. We believe it has 29 major activities within those 8 steps, and it's got 88 tasks within those 29 activities and 8 steps.
Thank you for watching this video, and we do hope you found it of interest and value. A more advanced discussion of the issues is provided in the following reading material, and especially in Sourcing Portfolio Analysis by Andrew Cox. This book is available from www.amazon.co.uk. In the Principles of Category Management and Strategic Sourcing Masterclass, there are 24 modules. These 24 modules are available to view within 5 sections. An introduction module. In Part A, the role of procurement and supply chain management, there are 6 modules. In Part B, world-class and best-in-class category management and strategic sourcing, there are 2 modules. In Part C, the activities and tasks in a world-class category management and strategic sourcing process, there is 1 module. In Part D, the principles of buyer and supplier exchange, there are 14 modules. For those interested in reading more widely about the topics in this masterclass, the following articles and books are recommended. All books are available from Amazon UK. Electronic copies of the slides in this masterclass are available to purchase from IIAPS by contacting info@iiaps.org. This shows a list of practitioner and academic articles about PSCM, category management, and strategic sourcing. This shows a list of books about PSCM, category management, and strategic sourcing. To ensure the successful implementation of the PSCM transformation, IIAPS provides consulting support to embed learning by doing, and also to fast-track desired improvements in performance. Our primary consulting service support is the QV Strategic Sourcing Challenge Workshop. This workshop is always focused on challenging existing real-life category strategies and brings together internal clients, who design and specify requirements, and the PSCM strategy leads to identify the key demand and supply factors impinging on current value for money performance. The QV report identifies immediate areas for improvements in value for money so the industry-leading quality, cost and delivery outcomes can all be achieved. For further information on the QV Strategic Sourcing Challenge Workshop, please visit www.iiaps.org/services-qv.html. For those interested in operationalising the concepts and methodologies discussed in this masterclass, the following route to accreditation and competence development is available. The International Green, Red and Black Belts in Advanced Purchasing and Supply Management. To obtain full professional membership, MIIAPS, at the International Institute, candidates have to utilise the concept introduced in this masterclass to develop and implement real-life category strategies and explain how this compares to world-class practices. The development of these real-time strategies is based on the application of best practice theory and the most advanced sourcing tools and techniques. Green Belt membership, awarded after successful completion of an initial category sourcing strategy supported by IIAPS staff. Red Belt membership, awarded after unaided satisfactory completion of a second real-life category sourcing strategy. Black Belt membership, awarded after unaided satisfactory completion of a third real-life category sourcing strategy. For further details about studying for these advanced international qualifications, download the brochure at www.iiaps.org/media-brochure.html.